Sometimes I think some phone calls begin long before the phone ever touches the table, before the screen lights up. They begin with silence. 3 a.m. always feels different. I don't look at the clock, but I always know when it arrives. It isn't about numbers. It's the feeling that something in the world has shifted, moved half a step to the side. Not abruptly, almost politely. So subtly that you don't notice it at once. You only notice that, suddenly, you feel uncomfortable inside your own body. At this hour, silence stops being background noise. It steps forward. It presses in, fills the space, steals the air. Sounds don't disappear. They simply lose the right to exist. Every rustle feels unnecessary. Every breath feels too loud, as if it could give someone away. I lie perfectly still and listen to that silence. It isn't empty. It has depth. As if you listened long enough, you could hear something else. Not a sound, a presence. Something that doesn't move or speak, but is already here. The numbers on the digital clock glow red. Their light softly reflects off the wall, the edge of the nightstand, the glass of a water bottle. They don't just show the time. They pulse, slowly, almost imperceptibly. I stare at them longer than I should, and at some point I realize I can't remember the last time I saw them this bright. As if someone turned up the brightness just for me. Or so I wouldn't look away. I blink, trying to distract myself, but the feeling doesn't fade. It sharpens, as if the world has finally decided to stop pretending it's ordinary. I'm not home. The realization comes slowly, as if pushing through layers of half-sleep. But once it reaches me, it becomes absolute. No alternatives. No doubt. The air is different. Drier. Chooger. The smells don't form anything familiar. Cleaning chemicals, old fabric, air conditioning, something sterile and lifeless. The smell of a place with no memory. A hotel room. A space where nothing truly belongs to me. A bed slept in by hundreds before me. Walls that remember nothing. Furniture placed not because someone wanted it that way, but because that's how it's done. As if the room itself has no interest in my presence. I'm in another city, hundreds of kilometers from home. I repeat it to myself like a mantra, as if the words could fix something in place. Distance, separation, safety. But with every second they sound less convincing. As if I'm trying to calm not myself, but someone else. Someone who is listening closely. The phone on the nightstand begins to vibrate. It doesn't ring. It doesn't make any sound I recognize. It just vibrates. Dry. Persistent. The movement transfers into the wood, and the nightstand answers with a faint, unpleasant resonance. As if something small and cold is scratching from inside the furniture, looking for a way out. The sound feels wrong. It doesn't belong to this night. This silence, this space, as if it came from somewhere else without asking permission. I don't reach for the phone right away. I just look at it, like an object that might disappear if I touch it. The vibration continues, short, insistent, unhurried, as if it knows I'll look anyway. When the screen lights up, the glare hits my eyes sharply. I squint, trying to focus, and in that moment my heart skips a beat. Not from fear, from recognition. One word is displayed. Home. Not a number. Not a contact. Not a name. Just a word. The same word I once typed into the settings without giving it any meaning. Back then, it was convenient. Now it looks as if someone has spoken it aloud in an empty room. And the room answered with silence. I haven't touched the button yet. I can still choose not to answer. But in that moment I understand. If I don't pick up, the call won't stop. And that is the worst part. Memory is a strange thing. When it starts protecting you, You don't yet realize it's already preparing to betray you. The word on the screen doesn't change. It doesn't blink or fade. It simply is. Calm, confident, as if it's been here longer than I have. As if it didn't arrive. It was waiting. My brain reacts before emotion does. I feel a familiar mechanism engage, the same one that always turns on when fear appears. It doesn't let me panic. It gathers fragments of logic and tries to assemble something whole. Reasons, explanations, chains, alarm system, glitch, call forwarding. I repeat the words in my head, turning them over like stones in my pocket. But they weigh less than they should. Each one is hollow inside. They don't hold. They don't calm me. They only distract. It's a normal call, not an alert, not an emergency, not an automated signal. Someone is holding the receiver of my home landline, the one in the corner of the living room, old, almost forgotten. I barely use it, but I never disconnected it completely. Because there are things you don't turn off, not because you need them, but because they feel safe, as long as they stay silent. I stare at the screen and feel something tighten inside me, slowly, quietly, as if my body is reacting before my thoughts do. I definitely locked the door. The thought comes sharply, not as a guess, but as a statement, something that isn't up for discussion. It doesn't need proof because it is the proof. I remember it too clearly. Not a general feeling, but specific details you can't invent. The cold of metal in my palm, the weight of the keys, the way they pressed against my skin, leaving a faint mark that didn't fade right away. I always notice details like that. Always. Because details are what separate memory from imagination. I remember standing in the hallway. The light was off, intentionally. I knew the space by heart. I could walk through it with my eyes closed. I remember the key sliding into the lock, slightly stiff, as always. The metal scraped softly. The first turn, slow, with resistance. The second, sharper, certain. 2 turns, always 2. I never do it differently. It isn't a habit. It's a ritual. Less leaves a feeling of incompleteness. More brings anxiety, like you've broken the order of things. 2 is the boundary. It means the space beyond the door no longer has access to me. I hear the click. Clean. Final. A sound that means control. A sound that says, you are safe. I remember putting the keys in my pocket, pausing with my hand on the door for a second. Not from doubt. Just because. As always. A gesture with nothing special about it. And that's exactly why it feels reliable. I couldn't have made a mistake. And yet, the phone keeps vibrating. I stare at the answer button longer than necessary. There's a strange tension in my fingers, as if they aren't quite mine. As if I'm taking part in something that started without me. As if my role was decided long ago, and I'm only delaying the moment. I press it. At first, nothing. The silence on the line isn't ordinary. It isn't empty. It's full. It has depth. And that depth feels too close. As if someone is standing right next to the phone on the other end. Not speaking. Not moving. Just waiting. I catch myself holding my breath. It feels like if I inhale too loudly, it will be heard. Hello? I say. My voice sounds dull, muffled, as if it's passing through thick fabric, as if it isn't quite my voice, only a weak copy. The answer is static. A thin electrical hiss, a sound that usually means no connection. But now, it feels different, as if it's hiding something, as if there's another layer beneath it. And then, another sound appears. Drip. I freeze, not immediately understanding what I heard. Drip. I know that sound too well. Painfully well. It's the kitchen faucet. It leaks slightly if the handle isn't tightened all the way. A sound that always annoyed me at night. Small, domestic, meaningless. Until now, because I shut the water off. I remember it as clearly as the lock. I even lingered by the sink a second longer than usual. Checked, looked, listened. Because once, I came back from a trip to a flooded kitchen. I didn't want that again. I couldn't have been wrong. Drip. And in that moment, I understand. If the door was locked, then someone is inside. And if someone is inside, the next thing I see won't be a sound anymore. Sometimes sound isn't the result of an action. Sometimes it is the action. I remember it clearly. I even paused at the sink a second longer than usual. Not from doubt, but the opposite. I wanted to fix that moment in memory. I turned the valve all the way, felt the metal stop, listened. Silence. Exactly what I expected. Because once before, I returned from a trip to a flooded kitchen. Water stood on the floor then, cold, indifferent, as if it had simply done what it was supposed to do. I remembered that smell, that sound. I didn't want it again. I couldn't have been wrong. Not this time. Someone turned the water on. The thought doesn't feel like speculation. It forms instantly, without words, like a fact. I feel something cold move through my chest and stop somewhere beneath my throat. I don't hang up. I don't even consider it. Ending the call feels unacceptable, almost dangerous, as if cutting the line would leave something unfinished, as if the line is holding not a sound, but a boundary. Instead, I put it on speaker. Static spreads through the room, filling it with a foreign, cold noise. It doesn't change. It doesn't fade. It doesn't react. As if it isn't interference, but background. The foundation everything else rests on. I open the security camera app. I do it automatically, without an internal command. As if this movement was planned long before tonight. As if I've simply reached the next step. The connection takes too long. The loading circle spins evenly, indifferently. It doesn't hurry. I watch it and feel the tension climb into my jaw, making swallowing painful. I wait. I don't blink. And the image appears, black and white, grainy, too sharp and too blurred at once. My living room. The same angle. The same view I've seen dozens of times. Everything is in place. The couch, the table, the shelf. The objects stand exactly where I left them. But they look different, detached, as if they're no longer connected to me, as if they exist on their own, and I'm only observing them from the outside. The shadow from the wardrobe falls across the floor in a strange way. It doesn't look like a shadow cast by a lamp. It spreads, as if someone poured a thick, dark liquid and let it set. I realize I don't remember it ever falling like that before. The phone table is empty. I stare at it longer than anything else. It's exactly where it should be. And yet, something doesn't add up. The realization comes slowly, painfully. The receiver is on the base. It hasn't been lifted. But the call continues. I hear it. I feel it. And with it, the water. The sound isn't louder, but it feels closer. As if it no longer has to cross distance. As if it's coming not from the apartment, but from inside my own space. I look at the camera feed and understand. If no one is holding the receiver, the call shouldn't exist. But it does. And in that moment, I feel that the camera hasn't shown me the most important thing yet. Something is outside the frame. Somewhere it isn't looking. And as my gaze slowly shifts across the screen, I realize the next thing I see will already have a shape. The scariest thing isn't when someone looks at you. It's when you suddenly realize they've been looking for a long time. My eyes move slowly across the image. I'm not searching for anything specific. I just let them drift, hoping that if I don't look too closely, reality will behave more carefully. The camera shows a familiar corner of the room. Everything looks almost right. Almost. And that almost is what won't let go. The sense of wrongness has no form, but it exists. It presses behind my eyes, pulling me back to details that never mattered before. My gaze stops in the corner by the window. There's a chair there. My chair. I know it too well. I know how its armrest creaks if you lean too hard. How the fabric folds when you sit deeper. I know which way it always faces, and that's why I understand immediately. Something is wrong. The chair is turned with its back to the camera. Not slightly. Not accidentally. Precisely. I never place it like that. Never. It always faces into the room. Always. I try to remember even one time it stood differently. There isn't one. A slow, deliberate chill moves down my spine. I stare at the chair longer than necessary. It feels like if I blink, it might change position. Or worse, confirm what I don't want to accept. Something changes in the receiver. The sound of water fades. Not abruptly. It simply gives way to another sound. Thinner. Closer. I don't understand it right away. Breathing. Slow. Wet. Even. The kind of breathing someone has when they're not in a hurry. I realize it doesn't sound like breathing into a microphone. It sounds like someone standing very close to me. I see you watching, the voice says. It takes a moment for the words to sink in. They arrive with delay, passing through layers. And when they do, something inside me drops. The voice is familiar. Too familiar. It's my voice, but stripped of intonation. Without doubt. Without tension. Without life. Flat. Mechanical. As if someone learned to reproduce it perfectly, but never understood why it needed emotion. I want to look away from the screen. I can't. It feels like if I stop watching, something will change without my knowing. From behind the back of the chair, a hand slowly rises. Not suddenly. Not theatrically. As if it knew I was already looking and was simply waiting for the right moment. The hand is holding a phone. My old phone. The one I lost 2 years ago. I remember tearing the apartment apart looking for it, writing it off as coincidence, eventually stopping thinking about it. The hand slowly waves at the camera. Left. Right. Calmly. Almost politely. You forgot to turn off more than just the water, the voice says. You forgot that some things see more than you think. I want to say something. Anything. But my mouth won't open. As if this space no longer allows my reply. And then I hear a sound that has nothing to do with the apartment. A knock. Not from the phone. Not from the camera. In reality, loud. Confident. The kind of knock that isn't accidental and isn't mistaken. I slowly shift my gaze from the screen to the hotel room door. It's still. Closed. Ordinary. But the voice I hear next doesn't come from the phone. It comes from behind the door. Open, my own voice whispers. I brought the keys. And only then do I understand. Everything before this was only a test. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't what's behind the door. It's what makes you open it. The knocking repeats. It isn't louder than before. Not faster. Not angrier. There's no impatience in it. Only certainty. As if whoever is on the other side knows. I will come. I remain still for a few more seconds. Maybe longer. Time behaves strangely in hotel rooms. It doesn't move forward. It accumulates. I listen to the silence between the knocks. It's tight, like air before a storm. Another knock. I stand up. Slowly. No sudden movements. The floor creaks softly beneath my feet, a sound far too loud in this silence. Every step feels wrong, as if I'm disturbing an order that formed without me. I approach the door. I stop a step away. My hand hangs in the air. I feel the cold of the metal before touching the handle. Inside, there's a strange sensation. Not fear, doubt. As if I've been given a choice. But the outcome is already known. A knock. Now it's very close. I carefully turn the handle. It gives without resistance. Too easily. The door opens. The hallway is empty. No retreating footsteps. No shadows. No movement. A long, identical corridor with identical doors. The light is even, cold. As if nothing ever happened here. As if there was no knocking. I step half a pace forward and slowly look left. Right. The silence answers immediately, without hesitation. No one. I'm almost ready to close the door when my gaze drops. On the floor, right by the threshold, lies a note. A small piece of paper. Folded in half. Neat. As if it was placed there carefully so I couldn't miss it. I don't bend down right away. I just look at it. And a clear, unwelcome understanding forms in my head. It isn't here by accident. I pick it up. The paper is dry. Cold. There's only one line written on it, in a handwriting I recognize too well. I don't get to read it yet. My phone vibrates in my pocket. Short. Careful. As if it doesn't want to scare me. I pull it out and look at the screen. A new message. No number. No name. Just a few words. Will you read it?